Okay. All the hominid species that we have talked about so far are all united with later hominid species in the presence of one anatomical behavioral complex, bipedal locomotion. All the Australopithecines, Ardipithecus, Auroran, Paranthropus, Homo, they're all bipedal. These fossils clearly indicate that bipedalism arose before encephalization. It's previously thought to be the other way around, and this was part of what we call the Piltdown hoax. So this is an example of Australopithecus afarensis and Homo erectus. And you can see some of the anatomical differences between the two. So how can we actually identify bipedality in the fossil record? Well, we can tell by exploring several aspects of their morphology, and that is different locomotor styles are often characterized by several morphological traits. For example, leapers are known to have very long hind limbs, climbers have long forelimbs, arboreal quadrupeds have short forelimbs and hind limbs of equal length. They also often have long tails for balance. Suspensory primates have long limbs, short trunks, short lumbar regions, and long curved phalanges. Bipedal primates have adaptations for upright balance and support. So this is just an example of some of the positions for during locomotion. Now, when using bipedal locomotion, most of the complete step of your body is balanced only on one of your legs. The problem involves balancing your body on your stance leg while your swing leg is off the ground. During normal walking, both feet are on the ground only 25% of the time. As speed increases, that percentage decreases. Consequently, there have been many anatomical shifts from quadrupedal arrangement developed to maintain a stable upright center of balance. So to have a stable center of balance, there have been structural anatomical changes from quadrupedal form of locomotion to other forms of locomotion to maintain your center of gravity. Changes that occurred in the pelvis. Well, to begin with, the pelvis became more bowl-shaped. The oxcoxae are shorter than in quadrupeds and they extend more to the front. The hip joint is also positioned more anterior-posteriorly, and this supports digestive and reproductive organs. It also results in a shift of the gluteus maximus, your butt muscles, to your rear, to the rear of your body. In quadrupeds, the gluteus maximus functions as a hip abductor. In bipeds, the gluteus maximus functions as a hip extensor, so to pull the leg to the rear when walking or running. Anatomical changes to the spine is that, first of all, the foramen magnum moves forward. So instead of being at the back of the skull, it's under the center of the skull. This enables you to balance your skull on top of the spine. We also see the development of spinal curves. This facilitates the transmission of upper body weight to the hips. Because if you didn't have this curve right here, your lumbar curve, all this would be out here and all the weight would be carried on your sacrum instead of over your pelvis, over your hips. We also see size gradation of the vertebra, so they start out small and then they get bigger and bigger. In bipedal animals, cranial vertebrae are smaller than the caudal. Anatomical changes in the femur as we see a lengthened hind limb. Our legs get longer and this increases stride length. We also see that the femur becomes angled inward. This brings the knees and feet closer together under the center of the pelvis. This allows much easier balance when transitioning from one step to the next, so that when you're on your stance leg, your stance leg is always directly under your pelvis instead of off to the side. In our feet, we developed what's known as a longitudinal arch. You know that curvature of your foot? Some people don't have it because they're flat-footed. This is very important for bipedal because it helps you push off. We also see realignment of the big toe. So instead of the toe being perpendicular to the other toes, it's now moving and becoming parallel to the other digits. This now facilitates toe off, pushing with toe to lengthen stride during bipedal locomotion. Just to demonstrate, this is a chin pelvis. Look how long and narrow it is. Australopithecine pelvis, it's short and wider, and here it's even getting wider with Homo sapiens. Not just because we have big brains, but because it's a way of carrying all the upper body weight. And here we see this is a chimp femur. Look how straight it is. It's not bringing the bone directly under the center of the pelvis. Australopithecine, bring it directly under the center. Modern human, directly under the center. And that allows us to be on our stance leg when our swing leg is off the ground while we're moving. So the evolution of hominid bipedalism really required complex anatomical reorganization for natural selection to produce this type of magnitude of changes. The selective benefits for bipedality must have been great. The most important way, though, that we know that these hominids were in fact bipedal comes from the work of Mary Leakey. In the 1980s, Mary Leakey discovered a 75-foot trail of footprints made by 3 bipedal individuals who crossed a thick bed of wet volcanic ash. The ash hardened like cement as it dried, preserving 75 feet of prints. Based on the date and the location, it's probable that they were made by Australopithecus afarensis. Features of the footprint that illustrate that they were obligate bipeds include deep impressions, show pronounced heel strike. We see lateral transmission of force from heel to base of lateral metatarsal. We see well-developed medial longitudinal arches. We see an adducted big toe. And we see deep impression from big toe off. So very, very nice footprints. As I said, there were 3 trails, 2 from site G and 1 from site A. Given the relationship between stride length and speed, it was found that the Laetoli hominids were walking at a very slow speed when the footprints were made, about 0.8 miles per second. This is average walking speed for modern humans who are walking in a small town. Another area where we have evidence for bipedally is the footprints from Cubiphora. These are much more recent. They're at 1.5 million years ago, and they are 3 footprint trails, 2 of 2 prints each, 1 of 7 prints. We also have several isolated prints. It's probably Homo ergaster based on the date. Based on the size and the stride, the individuals would have been about 5'9". The big toe is parallel to the other toes. They have a human-like arch, and they have relatively short toes. So it's a nice difference that we're seeing over time. So a big question that we need to now ask is, why did these hominids become bipedal? The most popular hypotheses for the evolution of bipedalism is that it frees the hands from making and using simple tools. This has long been considered the major selective advantage of bipedalism. So it frees the hands to carry X, Y, Z, to see over tall grass, to travel between trees, foraging, posture adaptation, thermoregulation, display. All of these have been suggested as to why hominids became bipedal. What are some of the advantages to freeing hands? Well, you can make and use simple tools. You can carry gathered food. You can carry your infants. You can carry extra water for foraging in drier areas. You can carry food to provision conspecifics. Zillman and Tanner suggest that many of the traditionally accepted differences between hominid and apes are based on a misguided and male-oriented overemphasis on hunting. Gathering plant foods provides most of the food for modern hunter-gatherers as well as living apes. Probably carrying infants, digging sticks, or natural containers for food and water, not clubs and spears. Lovejoy, however, suggests that the major adaptive change in distinguishing early hominids from apes was their reproductive capabilities. Living apes give birth every 3 to 5 years. This time is needed to cope with all the difficulties of caring for large, very slow-growing offspring. Humans, Lovejoy suggested, have short inner birth intervals. It's actually 3 to 4 years among modern human hunter-gatherers. He suggests that increased reproductive efficiency was made possible through a monogamous social system wherein males provisioned their mates and offspring. So basically, bipedalism allowed males to carry food back to their families. His suggestion that Australopithecus lived in a monogamous social group is based on the lack of canine dimorphism in most species. In terms of looking over the tall grass hypothesis, many primates living in open habitats, such as potus monkeys, frequently stand to look for conspecifics or predators, yet not one of them has adopted bipedalism. Hominid origin seems unlikely to have taken place in these open habitats as a result. For traveling between trees, Rodman and McHenry suggest that the early hominids may have fed in trees and adopted bipedal postures for traveling between trees because it was more efficient. However, studies have shown that at maximum running speed, bipedalism is twice as costly as quadrupedalism, so it is not more efficient. Feeding posture adaptation. Either on the ground or in the trees, it enabled feeding on tall bushes or small trees. Kevin Hunt argues from comparison with living chimps, early hominids stood to feed in arboreal settings. Jolly, however, argues that bipedalism is only going to be advantageous when the animal is feeding on small, evenly distributed objects, and that an individual's foraging efficiency is going to be linked to the speed with which it can pluck and ingest items. A squatting or partially bipedal animal with both hands free for foraging is better adapted to that type of environment. It's highly likely that Australopithecus and Paranthropus likely ate small hard objects such as seeds. Many foods of this nature are common in open habitats in which bipedality is most appropriate. This hypothesis is based largely on the habits of the gelada baboon, an open savanna small object feeder. However, there is increasing evidence that the earliest hominids did not inhabit open areas, but were inhabiting woodland habitats. Furthermore, other primates that regularly use bipedal postures have not adopted bipedal locomotion, and that's probably the biggest source of evidence against this hypothesis. One of the more interesting hypotheses for the evolution of bipedality is that of thermoregulation. Wheeler suggests that bipedalism would provide advantages to limiting direct exposure to the sun during the middle of the day and facilitating convective heat loss in a stressful, open, equatorial environment. Okay, but there's not any evidence to support that. Jablonski and Chaplin argue bipedality arose as an extension of bipedal displays of threat and gestures that are commonly found among African great apes. And finally, there is the fanciful aquatic ape theory, championed most vigorously by Elaine Morgan, that earliest hominids transitioned to bipedalism by walking upright in the water, which helped to support their body weight and negated other costs of walking erect. This, unfortunately, is not consistent with any environmental reconstruction, and the costs, which are nullified by immersion, are small, and the effects of the water are even smaller. So the entire ape theory is the aquatic ape theory is critiqued at www.aquaticape.org, and you can read more about it there if you so dare.